Morning, Neil.
Good morning to you, Jess. Good morning, everybody. Very different conditions today as you've just been discussing, and we're looking forward now to our final practice session before we get all proceedings underway officially for Armour All qualifying in 3 parts coming up later today, and then we hook into the next round of our very busy championship so far this year. Our second supercar event in 7 days. Round 4 of the Virgin Australia Supercars Championship, WD-40 Phillip Island SuperSprint. Busy day yesterday, a couple of practice sessions. Fabian Coulthard fastest by 6 1/1000ths of a second. Cars all sitting there at 45 degrees. You can see the little moisture patches on the road. They're in the pit lane and they're evident on the racetrack. Came down the lane just a couple of moments ago, and all the senior engineers, team owners and many of the drivers just poking their heads out there to see what they're dealing with. Doesn't matter how much you stare at it, it's patchy wet. But when you get 24 cars out there with more than 600 horsepower and those warm Dunlop tyres, I'm sure there'll be a dry groove appearing. You can see the weather forecast up there at the moment. Cooler temperatures today, possible showers throughout the day. Right now it's quite pleasant out there, and for the 3rd day running, relatively little wind. Phil Munday was on screen a few moments ago. That's Tim Edwards from Tickford Racing. They had a very solid and successful day yesterday. Championship-wise, McLaughlin is our leader by 124 points from Coulthard, Jamie Whincup, Shane Van Gisbergen in position number 4 in the championship. So the Shell V-Power Racing team and the Red Bull Holden Racing team back in their customary positions of slugging it out with each other. So this is the final little hit out. You'll see a lot of race runs in this session this morning. Not many people have done significant runs on tyres to understand how they'll trend over the journey. Before they come round at the end of this first exploratory lap, time to have a look at the racetrack in greater detail thanks to Virgin Australia, our championship partner, and we're at the Phillip Island Grand Prix circuit, one of the world's greatest racetracks. Practice record owned by Chaz Mostert from 2017, 4.5 kilometres, 180 kilometres an hour average speed. Top speed 285 clicks on the run to turn 1, highly wind dependent. Little under half the lap is wide open throttle, and you spend a disproportionate amount of time turning left here, which means the right side tyres, and particularly the right front, takes a big punishment. 370 metres to turn 1. It is a great corner. It's positively cambered. The rolling speed of the cars through there is extraordinary. Southern Loop is awesome. Turn 3 is flat, 225 kilometres an hour. Hairpin right-hander at turn 4, second gear, 75 k's. Very slow, but not the slowest on the racetrack. This one they call Siberia at turn 6, because if you go off there, you're in the middle of nowhere. No man's land, 105 kilometres an hour, the slowest speed at the apex, and then building speed with good tyre condition, good grip and good balance, flat through Hayshed. Approach speed to Lukey Heights, 240 kilometres an hour. Over the top of Lukey, where the car gets light, very easy to lock a brake in this area, down to the slowest corner on the track, MG, turn 10, 70 kilometres an hour. And then it's progression of the throttle all the way through 11 and 12. Takes a long time to get comfortably flat there. And there's an awkward gear change from 4th to 5th gear coming out of that final corner back onto the main straight. Main straight heads in a southerly direction. That's typically at this time of the year where you're poking into the breeze, but right at the moment there isn't much in the way of a breeze out there. 3 sectors, and we'll be talking about those sectors in particular in Armour All qualifying. Successful day yesterday for that group inside the garage. You saw Dick Johnson and Ryan Story, Shell V-Power Racing Team 1 and 2, Fabian Coulthard and Scott McLaughlin. 30.18 for Fabian, 30.18 for Scott McLaughlin. So you had to go to the 1,000th of a second to separate them, and it turned out that you needed 6 of those to be the fastest. So it was a crazy 6 1,000ths of a second between 1 and 2. Nice day yesterday also for Tickford Racing. Good solid start for car number 55. 9th position in the combined practice sessions for Chaz Mostert. Weekend before last weekend, he was racing in California in a BMW. This is Siberia that I spoke about before. Some drivers try and sneak through here in second gear, some in 3rd gear. Chaz has gone back into 2nd there. So you can see significant cloud cover at the moment. Listen to the throttle here. 100% flat, and there's patchy wet on the edges of the road. And you'll see all those witness marks there on the left-hand side, where over the top of the sawtooth curbing there, it's very easy to lock a brake, and then it's the right front here that you've got to modulate carefully with the brake pedal so that you hit that apex. Pick the throttle up now in 2nd, short shift to 3rd. A lot of load on the car as you try to change its direction and progress the throttle. 4th gear, turning in early. Here comes 5th, done. And then trying to commit to that 100% throttle as early as possible. And you want to pull top before the bridge. there's a little mark on the road there where Chaz pokes it back into 5th gear, trying as hard as he can to get through there, and he nearly ran out of road. So in the background there, he had to roll out of the throttle because it pushed too much in the nose. He's chasing his teammate Cam Waters. That's his engineer, Adam de Borre. Windcup's gone fastest on a 30.5. Here's something that's interesting. Now, that's immediately quicker now than it was yesterday for Jamie, so that's a half-second improvement. I went back to last year to try and get some context of what's going on at Red Bull. Fastest in combined practice in 2018 was Windcup, 29.9. Yesterday, he did a 30.9. He was a second off his time year on year, where McLaughlin did a 30.18, or near enough to a 30.2 last year, and he did a 30.2 yesterday. So there's been very little variation at the Shell V-Power Racing team, but a massive variance for Windcup. Mark Scape is back in the commentary box, and this has been a good news story so far this year. These guys in Team 18, Irwin Racing, Charlie Schwerkolt, Mark Winterbottom. Great weekend last weekend with an Armour All pole. Good morning to you, Mark, and very different conditions out there today, but it was an interesting little thing that I unearthed last night.
Yeah, good morning, Neil. And it was a great performance by Mark Winterbottom and Team 18 in Tasmania. Lounsey and I gave Frosty the man of the match as a consequence of his performance over the weekend. Unlucky not to get on the podium on Saturday, and a pole position, first one for that team. In your evidence and the way that you've rolled those numbers out, that's very interesting based on being a second slower for Red Bull Holden Racing Team and effectively the same lap time from Mustang to Falcon year on year. That's very good numbers in terms of understanding what the twin spring has done to hurt the Red Bull Holden Racing Team. And the reality around this place is that it does change a lot. So the less UV, the cloud cover that we've got this morning, the little bit of rain always cleans the place up. McLaughlin's now done a 30.18. That's exactly the same time as they did yesterday. And a exactly the same time as they did yesterday. And Windcup, that's a very good performance, obviously a lot faster, 30.5.
Oh, mate, Mark, seriously, it's 6/10,000. It's different. It's massively different. How could you possibly suggest that? 6/10,000, come on. Drive a truck through that gap.
I need to be a little bit more detailed.
His consistency is insane, isn't it? Like a 30.1861. Yeah. You and I went scrambling for the sheet from yesterday to 30.1867.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Exactly. So what I was just trying to ascertain there in terms of balance for Mark Winterbottom, because as we said, he went so well in Tasmania, but they've been struggling so far this weekend. And one of the real keys around this place, and that's why McLaughlin's so good, is that it's so technical from a technique perspective. You have to try to keep the rolling speed up on the way to the corner, so modulating the brake, and then you can just hear that little back off then. That is called throttle steer. So what you do with it is you just come out of the throttle ever so slightly, just like that at Lukey Heights. You'll hear it best at the final corner. We'll stay on and have a really good listen. We'll wind the audio up and have a listen to the engine note when he comes onto the straight. That's great. He actually had to come right out of the throttle bend. The art of that last corner, so the car's not very good. The art of the last corner is not coming right out of the throttle. It's trying to keep the mid-corner speed up. The other one that's really good for throttle steering is this one, Southern Loop. Have a listen. Beautiful. That's a great example of real technique. So when you throttle steer, you come out of the throttle, just there, you've done the same thing, and it weights the front wheel. So you don't actually turn the wheel, but the car's attitude changes based on the pitch of the car and it transferring weight back to the front wheel to make it steer. So technique on the way to the corner is brake modulation, throttle steer in the middle of the corner, and then throttle control on the way out to minimise the wheel spin. This is a really technical racetrack.
Bit of evidence of that car just breaking away in the rear in a couple of uncomfortable places there. You want a little bit of oversteer at this racetrack. Too much understeer makes the car too slow for too long. Anton said to me this morning that he was intending to do a bit more of a race run, so we'll see how that pans out for him. It was a good strong day yesterday for car number 99. Pretty happy with their day's work. Ended up being 7th fastest, but he was at or near the top various occasions. But when we were riding with Frosty there were just a couple of spots. It wagged the tail at turn 1. That gets your attention. And then it did it again at the southern loop in turn 2. 2 you can kind of live with because eventually it all settles down when you get to the second apex. But when they jump sideways on you at turn 1, little eyes get a bit dish plate sized. Greg Murphy, good morning to you.
Good morning, Croppo. Yes, just on Anton Di Pasquale, you're absolutely right. He is on a race run. I just spoke to Barry Ryan about that, so he's going to do a longer run. David Reynolds is in the garage again. Now, they went to more of Anton's setup for a qualifying car today, and David wants to sort of try and see how that feels in comparison, because obviously he missed out on going straight through the second phase of qualifying today. But they have actually got an issue in here with the number 9 at the moment. There's a sensor problem. Barry just confirmed they're all over the car at the moment, trying to isolate, I think, a wheel sensor problem and something else as well. The computer is plugged into the car. So he was actually going to simulate a bit of a qualifying run just now, but that's now on hold for number 9, David Reynolds. So we'll just keep an eye on what's going on there. But he is still focused on trying to get that car right for qualifying as Anton goes about that race run, as you guys.
Thank you for the update, Greg. Greg's down there together with Rihanna and Andrew Jones this weekend. Sadly, we don't have our colleague and friend Mark Larkin with us this weekend for family reasons. I look forward to having Mark back in our next instalment of the Supercars Championship. Grey Goose, nice in a glass with ice, not so good on a racetrack.
You were working on that overnight, weren't you? You were. You don't get a line like that. You don't get a line like that from nowhere. Now, I've been working on that.
There's a chorus of people saying, yeah, that's a great idea in the background here.
Do you know it's only...
It's a bit early for
it's 10:50 local time, and for you to be thinking about Grey Goose before 11 o'clock...
It's okay, somewhere in the world.
Okay.
Very good morning, Mark and Neil. An improved performance from Jamie Wingcup so far on his side of the garage, but he has just come in and done a front spring and damper and rear spring and damper change in that car, so they're still searching for performance.
Thanks for the update, mate. New livery this weekend. Car number 8, Nick Percat, Dunlop car last weekend. Blink and it changes, 711 this weekend. Now, here's another weird fact. I trip over these things occasionally. I think this was the car that brought up the dust at turn 12. It was Nick. Actually, that's a pretty wild moment. Heart rate check for Nick Percat. That's the other angle of it. Wow, that's not just bowling a wide. Oh, he's had to try and navigate the polystyrene WD-40 sign. So he spent the best part of 300 or 400 metres negotiating his way out of that. Yeah,
That Bradley's face. That's classic. Have a look at his face.
It's a bit of stress there. Yeah, so that was a little moment for them. 711 on the car this weekend, and
Looks good.
got nothing to do with anything other than Nick's done 7 events and 11 races here. I noticed in his stats yesterday. I don't know where that
7-11. Nah, really good.
The basis of the approach to that sponsor.
I like your geese gags better than your 7-11.
Get them all out of the way early, folks, and then that way you can settle in for a fun afternoon of proper supercar racing. Richie Stanaway's made a little error down there at turn 2. Boost Mobile, Gary Rogers Motorsport entry.
Have a look at the rocks coming out from under that car.
Now, I think last weekend, if my memory serves me correctly, that was his best weekend of the year. Yes, it was. So remember, he was rocking along nicely, having qualified 7th, and he got delayed in the pit. But that was a good, strong performance for him in Tasmania. In the foreground there is Cam Waters. I'll spit it out eventually. And he's currently sitting in 5th. So he looked like looking as though he's having a more buoyant weekend as well. So McLaughlin, 0.3 of a second up on Wingcup. So Jamie's still sitting on that 30.5. So he went straight out the gate and did that. So he's peeled 0.4 out of yesterday's time. So that's an immediate improvement. So they'll immediately then do an assessment on, okay, if that's the direction, do we continue to progress that notion? And that still puts him about half a second away from where he was last year. Whoops. And he's having trouble at the moment in that car, isn't he? I wonder whether or not they've got a pretty sad set of tyres on that car.
It's interesting how the slightest overrun from turn 3 into turn 4, the braking area for Honda is always hard. He missed the apex there massively at Siberia also, so that car's not behaving nicely. Todd Hazelwood was on the right-hand side when he approached Honda. Todd Hazelwood, we spoke of earlier, did a really good job to be the fastest of the 888 cars, but that's to me, real evidence as we see Percat locker right front, just gets it unlocked, decides just to run wide so he doesn't torture that tyre too much. But it does show that the Red Bull Holden Racing team to be just slightly, they're about a tenth slower than Hazelwood yesterday, that they're less than happy with their cars, because you would expect Whincup and Van Gisbergen with the factory cars to be a fair way up the road from Todd at a place like this. You'd probably normally expect them to be 3 or 4 tenths of a second faster than Todd Hazelwood. And that wasn't the case yesterday.
Just keeping an eye on the Red Bull garage, and I've noticed Shane Van Gisbergen has spent about 9 minutes in the pit lane. They've done look like a rear suspension geometry change in that car. The right side was done in about 4 odd minutes, but they've got a bit of an issue with this left side, and they've got 4 mechanics in there now trying to fix that up for Shane Van Gisbergen.
Thanks for the update, Andrew. Back to Chaz Mostert on screen at the moment. He's got 2 green sectors so far. He's sitting in 4th. He's giving away about half a second, a little bit more than that, in fact about 6/10 of a second to McLaughlin, who jumped straight out of the gate and punched out that 30.1. There's no evidence now of any moisture on the racetrack anywhere. Still not a lot of temperature out there. Oh, it's twice now we've seen people making errors there, so I immediately look out the window to see whether the wind has shifted. And as Mark caught me yesterday and I was waxing on about a northwesterly, and you went, no, that'd be a southerly.
Good job.
Yep.
That's a big gain on that second lap.
So nothing going on wind-wise out there at the moment. So it's people getting a bit excited without enough grip, trying to get on with it on the throttle out of that last corner. You have to wait an eternity before you get back to the ideal 100% throttle there. I think I said yesterday, one of the walk-arounds when I was in the Dunlop garage, just stop and consider the extraordinary load on that right front tyre around here. And you can actually break a front tyre here. A couple of years ago we had tyre trauma, and what the teams manage really carefully at this racetrack is the thing that you made a lot of reference to last weekend, Mark, and that is those camber settings, which you can see from that wonderful shot at the front of the car there on Tim Slade's car. It's the offsetting, the angle of the front wheel, trying to compensate for the distortion on the tyre. So typically they distort a lot, and you can see the distortion. In fact, even as Chaz, it's distorting now.
There'll be a lot more than that distorting
right.
when he was out there.
Exactly. Here is from on board. We'll have a listen to the throttle here. Chaz was pretty optimistic in the let's get back to 100% throttle, and he was willing, but the balance and tyre condition wasn't. He just ran out of road on the exit of 12.
But that is so close to going left. So at a lot of the club meetings, most of the crashes that you see at that final corner is people doing exactly what Chaz just did, but the right-hand rear wheel makes the grass and then it spins to the inside fence. It's a little bit like we saw at turn 7 with Simona and Anton De Pasquale in Tasmania, and that accident to the left there, you're going fast. That entry to the straight is roughly at that point almost 200 kilometres an hour.
So I didn't really finish spitting it out, but those camber settings in as much or as little as 0.1 of a degree make a big difference around here. So for qualifying, you can be a bit more aggressive and seek more turn, but for longevity during the race, you don't want to be too crazy with that. They're doing a bit of work inside the Castrol Racing garage for Rick Kelly. Let's get to Rihanna.
Thanks, Margaret. They've actually just changed front bars for Rick Kelly. He was experiencing a bit of flapping on that front bar, so they've just replaced that front bar and see if they can eliminate that issue.
Such an aero-sensitive place, isn't it, Rihanna? So that's very important, and they did a great job yesterday. So we've already spoken about Anton De Pasquale, and we spoke about Todd Hazelwood, but remembering Rick Kelly was the fastest. He did a beautiful job, faster than Nissens. He did a 30.6 and was the first of the non-Mustangs. Red flag now, so that's probably for one of your friends. Been a squadron of Cape Barron geese down here through the course of the weekend. Maybe that's the case. As we shout out to all our officials again this weekend. The place, Phillip Island, is presented beautifully by the Lynn Fox family, and everybody down here with the Phillip Island event has done a tremendous job. And again, to all our officials and volunteers, thank you very much for your CAMS affiliated help. And there's hundreds of people around the racetrack, and there's a fair few of those that have caught us out through the course of the weekend. It's walking right up to the edge of the curb. I'm not sure what corner that was. Yesterday they were at turn 7 at the kink. Neil was talking about how well they fly yesterday, Crompo. That was a really good segment that you had going there in aviation land. Bit of aero work.
Get to fly for free. So a little mistake down there, and just releasing the brake pedal pressure down at turn 4 and actually using the old escape road, a little bit of the old racetrack down there for Scott McLaughlin. Here's the onboard. Turn 3 is a cool corner. Dragged it on the limiter for quite some time and realised he had no chance of making that apex at that speed, and then almost comes into the back of our broadcast compound and goes around the loop road there and then rejoins. Pretty narrow, that one, isn't it?
It certainly is. That was the old corner before the refurb in 1988, so they did run into there, and there you go. What's that called now?
Takeoff.
Okay.
Yeah, the Gardner Straight, named after old teammate Wayne Gardner, victorious here in 500cc Grand Prix racing 30 years ago. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
And back-to-back victories in 89 and 90 at Phillip Island, and the refurb at the time was greatly welcomed, wasn't it, by the entire motorsport industry, 2 and 4 wheels, because it reinvigorated one of the great circuits. It opened here back in 1956. In fact, this is the location, as we look at David Reynolds. It was the original home of the Armstrong 500, which has become our great endurance race, the Bathurst 1000, and it's a great history, great endurance racing history here, and we've seen some amazing names, cars and races here over the years.
Certainly have. Not many racetracks are as fondly remembered and felt in terms of being the favourites for 2 and 4 wheels. So MotoGP and Superbike riders rave about how great this racetrack is, and we do the same. There's some young patrons enjoying. It always reminds me, this place, a little bit of English racing, where people come out, they're able to park with their car. It's such a big site. It's almost 4.5K racetrack. And it's always, as I said, presented so beautifully. It's always mown and landscaped to within an inch of its life. And the way that you can drive the car right up to the fence and stand and depict at these fast corners the body language and the look. There's not a better spot to watch a car on the inside of turn 1 as there is anywhere else in the country. 285K as you approach. The cars slide through into 210K at turn 1. And there's 4 or 5 other spots around the track that are very similar to that in terms of watching real commitment and real body language of race cars.
Be careful you didn't arrow off the front of that at that angle.
Exactly.
So it's a great spot to watch the cars, but it looks like you've got to use a bit of toe pressure to stay there. I love that inside of turn 1. We're on air all weekend now, but in the slightly lazier days, we'd be back down on the inside of 1 down there, watching the cars arrive. What is extraordinary for me is just how much the tyres get punished down there. You can actually hear them protesting as they screech across the road. Very smooth. It's very, very gentle on the dampers and the general suspension system on the car. Pretty gentle on brakes. You don't really get into them too hard around here, but what it is incredibly tough on tyres because you spend a huge percentage of the lap turning. It's only 10 kilometres an hour faster in its average speed than last weekend at Symmons Plains. But I just went and looked at the turning percentages on the data that we have here. 2/3 of the lap is spent turning the race car around here, and the wide open throttle percentage here is lower than when we were at, for example, Symmons Plains last weekend. When you think about the pictures of the tracks in your mind, it makes sense. Here you dance the throttle like here a lot. Turn, wait, progress the throttle. Patience is a key here, and if you grab it too early, then invariably you just create your own headache and light up either end of the car. Dunlop curb cam, beautiful shot. That's at turn 3. That's a great corner, unless the tyres are a little on the ordinary side of their life, or there's a bit of moisture around.
Or there's a crosswind. They're the 3 things that knock you around there.
There's been 1 or 2 make the hedge down there when there used to be one. Did you ever visit the tea tree down there?
No. Did you?
No.
Sure?
Glenn, no, guaranteed.
Larry Perkins did.
Larry did. I think Glenn did at one stage as well. There's been a couple of people arrive down there. But it's all been done. The spec of the circuit from the safety perspective is impressive now, but back in the old days there were a few more things to grab along the way. Will Davison on screen, Milwaukee Racing, and this car has been there or thereabouts all season really, 13th at the moment, and he's on a 31.5, 1.4 seconds to find. And Will dropped a little bit in the championship last weekend in Tassie. A couple of bad outing, so he's gone down to 10th. At one stage, he was 4th in the championship after Melbourne. And McLaughlin's still in the garage. Macaulay Jones is in the garage. The other 22 cars are active on the track. Percat still further back than fullback, so he's 3.9 seconds off the money and last, but he's just done his personal best in the first sector, and it's about half a second away from the best time that we saw McLaughlin do in the first sector. So it looks like they've got themselves organised. There must have been something weird either with the tyre set or some other fundamental problem with that car. He couldn't be 4 seconds away.
Exactly. Heimgartner's done a pretty good job. He just jumped up to 4th there as his fastest time for the weekend with a 30.7, Murph.
Yes, Gaby, just Scott McLaughlin sitting here in the garage, all very cool, calm and collected for the 17 at the moment. Ryan Story just confirmed that just waiting here for a little bit longer. They've got his practice 1 set of tyres sitting here ready to go to throw on, and they were a green set yesterday that he used to do that time, which you guys said is pretty much equal to what he's got on the time sheets at the moment. Now, that time that he did before to equal his practice time yesterday was done on an older set of practice tyres, so he is really happy with the car. Says the track is in good condition at the moment and faster than what it was yesterday. So he's just still sitting here. They're just very quiet, no work going on the car at all, but they're going to throw that practice 1 set of tyres on shortly, and we'll get a really good reference on how fast this track really is.
There's absolutely no wind out there at the moment, and there's no fierce sunlight on the track at all. There's 100% cloud cover, but it's up very high at the moment. You think about his performance here across different teams and vehicles over the journey. He's had 6 victories, including a clean sweep in 16 and 18, Scott McLaughlin. He's got 8 poles against his name, and he's only raced here at 15 races, but that's not events. It's 6 events, 15 races. So the ratio of Armour pole success is pretty impressive, and 6 straight since 2016. So there's a little bit of a him factor in all this. He just seems to click with this place. Now they've got David Reynolds up and motoring again, which is good news. I spoke to Alistair McVeigh this morning, and he said, is there any possibility that we could order a quick rule change for this afternoon, because only 4 get to progress from that first qualifying session. We've got 24 cars in the field this weekend, not 25, so that's a little variation in those who progress. And he's going to be nervous. You know, we're not totally on top of the car. Doesn't want to get trapped here.
No doubt, and that will be stressful for those 14 cars that have got to participate in Q1. So Armour qualifying around here is always great. It's got the knockout format again this weekend, and from the 14 cars at the start, we're looking for the top 4. And they'll join the 10 fastest cars from yesterday afternoon from practice 2, and then the 10 fastest cars out of practice 2 will progress to Q3.
You generated a couple of poles here back in the day. What's your favourite corner? When you stitched it all together right here and you felt, yeah, okay, that didn't leave too much on the table, which was the one that gave you the most satisfaction?
Well, I think the Hayshed, when you've committed to being flat, it's just a fantastic corner, isn't it, turn 8? And for all those times that you were talking about yesterday, that you tell the engineers that you got through there flat, and you go back and have a look at the throttle trace on the data afterwards and say, oh, I just had to have a little back off there.
Why is that line going up and down on the data? And you say, it must have been a connector, because I was definitely flat.
I definitely had my foot on there, but you talk to yourself the whole way. So it's a very brave corner, but there's 4 or 5 of those styles of corners. Turn 1's a great corner. Turn 3's a great corner. The Hayshed, and even the final corner, when you get it really right at turn 12, is exceptional. And that's why we love it. It's fast, it's flowing, it's European style. Originally based on the old Zandvoort circuit from Holland is what the original design was based around. But it's an exceptional racetrack. And as I said, for 2 or 4 wheels, drivers and riders love it.
Jack LeBrock, truck assist, Holden Commodore for Techno Autosports on screen. 22nd in the championship after our first 8 races.
What about you? What was your favourite?
Oh, you've stolen the thunder. That's the corner, isn't it? It's just a magnificent corner in any car. Also, I think there's a particular enjoyment in the last and first corners if you get them both right, because it's such a big contributor to the lap. But it's a huge personal challenge to get yourself wound up into the right level of frenzy, to make sure you've engineered the car to the best possible circumstances. And I mean, there's something pretty cool about attacking turn 1 here. And if you do get that brief opportunity just to unhinge from the task and look at what you're seeing out there, which is pass straight endlessly. It's a pretty magnificent thing. And you and I spoke briefly about it yesterday. I had a run in a Formula 3000 car with qualifying tyres on it. You had a run in a Group C Nissan sports car, and both those cars were genuinely flat through turn one.
Yeah, that's fast.
A fair bit of white knuckle fever involved in that process at good 190 miles an hour.
Exactly. And that run down the hill there, all you can see is Bass Strait. It does look like it's reasonably close when you're doing that sort of rate.
Ask Cam McConville. He had a big moment here years ago and tripped up over a car on the front straight and basically went halfway to Flinders Island by the time it finished.
Totally. Now for the train spotters, this is going to be awkward as you see the cars arrive over the hill down there. Cars coming out of the pit, cars on fast laps, and that is awkward. He won't be happy. Scott won't be very joyful about all that. And as you can see, Parks Golding wide and high, and he will not be wrapped about that manoeuvre.
Not a lot of excuses for it in this era because everyone's got a tracker. They can see where the cars are on the road. They've all got radios. So, and it's 4.5 kilometres of racetrack. So it's frustrating. And there's a safety aspect in all that because the exposure rates are extraordinary. So Scott's doing 285 kilometres an hour. It's James Golding who's at the apex.
Oh, and he carts him. So James' obligation there was to stay to the right-hand side. He probably didn't know, but that's also bad communication. So as Scott came out of that corner, and you are 100% committed down there, we've seen some great images of he and Jamie Whincup over the last few years through there, 210 kilometres an hour. He's out sideways, and car 34 was effectively online. So he needed to have moved over to the right and let Scott by.
And we make the point that they're near impossible to see out of, but it's a responsibility of the engineer or the team to make sure the driver's fully informed.
Yep.
To understand what's going on. So we've got inside a couple of minutes remaining in this session now. It's McLaughlin over Whincup. In fact, Fabian's just changed that scenario, so he's now 4/100 slower than his teammates. So it's McLaughlin, Coulthard, Whincup. Holdsworth just jumped up. Bit of movement in that rear wing again. So we've seen that quite a few times where those wing end plates are rattling around on those cars. Hazelwood looks strong again. Mark, he's in the top 10. He's the second of the Holdens. Rick Kelly's strong again. He's in 9th position for the moment. So we've got a spread half a second across the top 6 cars. There's Cam Waters in 8th. Personal best sectors for him in 1 and 2. So he's on a decent lap. Coming up now to the 1 minute mark. So there'll be a frantic rush. Under investigation, no surprise, cars 17 and 34 at turn 1. So driving standards advisor Craig Baird and Cam's race control raising their eyebrows when they saw that moment down there. And that'll be about safety. They're just concerned about a big moment. Now, Waters actually did a better job than I thought. So he moved to 3rd, quickly eclipsed by James Courtney, who's come up 16 spots. So we lined up at the same coffee shop this morning, and James was frustrated by the fact that they've just not been able to get on top of the balance of that car. Hazelwood's just come up another 2 spots into 7th. Race director Tim Schenken, Cam's race control. McLaughlin, Coulthard, Courtney, Waters, Whincup. We're inside 30 seconds as called by Tim, and then it's Mostert, Hazelwood, Holdsworth, Heimgartner and Kelly. Now Courtney, I reckon he must be on a fairly decent set of tyres, has actually just done the best first sector of any. It's Courtney, McLaughlin, Coulthard in the 3 sectors at the moment. James is blazing in car number 22. He's in the middle sector on the way to Siberia. And has McLaughlin got some pace here? Remember that he lost the first bite of those tyres due traffic. He's very close to his personal best, but he missed out by, well, just a little less than 1/10 of a second moving his own time. Courtney's in the background here. Waters on screen is 4th at the moment. Personal best for him in the 1st sector. James lost a bit of ground in the middle sector, so the first bit was on fire, but the second bit not so much.
So apparently he was on a green tyre there, Courtney. What that does show you is the phasing. So what he's done on his 2nd lap in the 1st sector is making sure that the front tyre is really in. Hardest part of qualifying at this place is getting the front tyre, especially the left-hand front tyre, to be up to temp and pressure when you turn into the fast right-hander at turn 1. So Courtney did a 30.77, plays a 30.41, which was his fastest from the previous lap. So McLaughlin, Coulthard, Courtney, Waters, Whincup, who's definitely made an improvement. That's good news for everybody down there at Red Bull Holden Racing Team. Mostert, Hazelwood again, very impressive. Holdsworth, Heimgartner, fastest of the Nissans, and Scott Pye with 200 on his car today.
Seen a bit of motocross here so far this weekend, haven't we? So, whoa, on the upshift, the flat shift, 4th to 5th. Waters left his foot in it, but it jumped sideways on him. He caught it, but the problem is it just carts you wide. So he was actually in the dirt before he got to that extension on the apron behind the curbing. Good news for Courtney, so that'll be, even though with decent tyres on it, that'll be a little boost for everybody in there to understand what the car behaviour is like as they prepare for Armour All qualifying. Confirmation of the results for you. Practice 3, the final practice session going into our quali coming up later on today. McLaughlin, Coulthard, Courtney, Waters, Whincup, Mostert, Hazelwood. Nice work. Holdsworth, Heimgartner, the best of the Nissans. Then Scott Pye celebrating his 200th supercar race today. Reynolds heading the next group of cars with Will Davison down the bottom of that. And on the third page here, we've got James Golding, who's under investigation for impeding Scott McLaughlin. Simona Di Silvestro, Richie Stanaway and Jack LeBrock make up the balance of the field. It's a spread of just on 1.9 seconds from one end to the other. Impressive times, though, from McLaughlin and Coulthard. There is Scotty McLaughlin, pretty much repeated the time he achieved yesterday. Take a look at the highlights. Practice number 3, which started with some patchy fringes around this racetrack. Cloud cover today. We're shooting for a top of 16 degrees. We're likely to see some showers before the day's done. 30-minute session where quite a number of people went out with the express purpose of understanding what they would achieve over a race run. They wanted to see how the tyres would behave and what the car balance was like across the journey. Troubles early on for Nick Percat in the 711 car this weekend. He ran very wide and then it took hundreds of metres to be able to skillfully guide it back on the slightly wet grass there. He's had success at this racetrack, but it wasn't a good start in the proceedings for him. He did end up with a reasonable time at the end. Shane Van Gisbergen, they had a power steering drama this time last year with the car and they battled yesterday to find a balance. Looks like they made a bit of a gain with Whincup's car. Shane wound up in 13th position, so they had bits and pieces scattered on the garage. And off for Richie Stanaway at turn 2 in the weeds there. There's quite a bit of action on the outside of the final corner. This time it was Chaz Mostert's turn in the Super Cheap Mustang. He bowls a little wide there. And then we saw that last blast for everybody. But traffic was the issue for Scott McLaughlin when he got down to turn 1. James Golding in the middle of the corner, and James didn't know he was there, almost had him wide at the exit of turn 1. But in the end, Scott McLaughlin still had the quickest time. He achieved it very early in the session. They shake their heads inside the garage at Shell V Power Racing. McLaughlin over Coulthard and Courtney. Next up, we're going to see the supercars with Armour All qualifying action. Crowd building up here today for race 9 of our championship, 120 Ks, 27 laps, and that's what it looks like inside the garage where the Supercars motorsport staff measure the cars through a scrutineering process. They're the scales and there's data measuring equipment on the left that you can see there as well. So they put a lot of effort into making sure that the cars are legal and there's a high level of scrutiny. Let's go to Andrew.
Jamie Whincup, an improved performance today. Your shoulders are back, mate. You've gotten rid of the hunch.
Yeah, a little bit. Of course, pretty disappointed with yesterday not getting in the 10, but today's a new day. We definitely made an improvement on the car, definitely a step forward, but still a long way to go.
Your comment yesterday was you were looking for grip front and rear. Have you improved that? Is it one end or the other?
No, we've improved both, but still no major strength. You know, still got that understeer, oversteer sort of scenario going on. But hey, we're chipping away. Unfortunately, we're coming from a long way back, but we're slowly improving the car as the weekend goes on, and hopefully we can keep doing that today and then again tomorrow.
Looks like you're digging deep. Thanks, Jamie.
Thanks, mate. Cheers.
And a bit of a frustrating moment out there. Waited for a fair bit of that session there, Scott, to get a run towards the end, probably just to check your qualifying performance on a bit of tyre, and sort of all got buggered up by another car. How frustrating.
It was one of the boost guys. I think it was Golding, but it was a bit of a balls up, but it's not the nicest thing coming down the front straight and cars weaving going into the fastest corner in Australia, really. So it was pretty wild. I actually thought he saw me there, so I was going to keep going, and then he kept coming across. I was like, oh crap. So anyway.
It is a hard one, but still, you know, we've got information, you've got people in your ear, radios, you've got trackers on the screens on the telemetry and everything. So, to have that happen, it's also a bit of a moment, makes you a bit of a fright, I would expect too.
Yeah.
Not expecting it.
Well, yeah, absolutely, but at least it's only practice. That's the one thing we can take out of it. But I'm sure like Jimmy's a smart guy. He won't do it again. So yeah.
The car's pretty good though. I mean, you were going to go and check obviously the outright pace. I mean, straight out the gate on an older tyre. The time you did replicated what you did yesterday.
Yeah, I was stoked to do that second lap and do like a 30.2 even on that tyre. But yeah, early in the session we did that 30.1. So yeah, the car's really quick. I was just unfortunate because I really wanted to try to go a bit quicker. So
Sure you did.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Thanks. Cheers.
James Golding, and I'm not sure if you caught the vision just out of the corner of your eye there between yourself and Scott McLaughlin. Just talk us through from your point of view.
Yeah, I was just warming my tyres up out of the pits. Obviously, didn't see Scotty coming up behind me. Yeah, obviously wouldn't ever do anything like that on purpose. Lucky it wasn't qualifying, I was getting a penalty. But yeah, we're sort of struggling a little bit with the car. Really, when we put green tyres on, we're not really getting that gain. So we've got a bit to work on, but yeah, we've still got a long way to go in the weekend.
The replay was just on the screen there. Were you getting information from your engineer about the lap that Scott was on?
No, I was just going out with Richie and warming tyres up. So anyway, it's both parties as well. My fault just as much as the team. So anyway, we'll move on. We'll get some speed out of it and race up the front hopefully.
Thanks, James.
Cheers.
James Golding with Rihanna Crean, so they'll investigate that. Cam's race control just to understand it. I'm sure that James didn't intend to do it, and nobody got hurt, thank